Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kim Conhauser-Freeman, Executive Director of the Women's Foreign Policy Group, and on behalf of the WFPG, I want to welcome you all to today's conversation. The WFPG is a network of international affairs professionals dedicated to advancing women's leadership in international affairs and supporting women throughout their careers through programs such as this, mentoring, and by connecting women across sectors and across borders. Today, we're thrilled to partner with the UN Office of Human Resources to delve into mid-career pathways and opportunities at the United Nations, to demystify the application process and to discuss what a UN career really looks like, either at headquarters or in the field. I'll keep introductions very brief today because we have a lot to cover and we want to get to your questions. We encourage you to visit the link in the chat to read our speakers' bios. First, we'll hear from brief comments from two impressive women who both joined the UN later in their careers. Aruna Thanabalasingam, I think I kind of got that right, hopefully, Director of the Administrative Law Division in the UN's Department of Management Strategy, Policy and Compliance, and a longtime WFPG mentor. And Suzanne Shanahan, Chief at the Enterprise Application Center at the UN's Office of Information and Communications Technology. We'll then turn to a brief presentation by Joan Ampa at the UN's Office of Human Resources and her colleagues, Eva Jansen and Selena Brown, on the recruitment process, before turning to your questions, which you can enter at any time using the Q&A button function at the bottom of the screen, and I'll get to as many as I can. If I don't get to your question, we'll also have time during the breakout sessions. You can join and ask your question on your own there as well. And with that, Aruna, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Good afternoon to all. I'm very pleased to have been invited to cover the opening comments at this WFPG event today and to share some thoughts about my journey from the private sector to the UN. I'm an HR professional. I have 30 plus years of experience from the private sector and the UN, working in the US as well as in Africa. My expertise, I focused on people and organizational transformation, and included in that strategic talent management, and then HR generalists throughout my career. After 13 years in the private sector, mainly in a professional services firms, I started out with KPMG in Kenya and then East Africa, and then with PricewaterhouseCoopers here in the US, and followed by Deloitte Consulting, also here in the US. And then I went back to KPMG in East Africa, supporting and building the HR consulting practice throughout East Africa and working in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia, based out of Kenya. I joined the UN in 2001 when an opportunity presented itself, and I have not looked back since. I'm very proud to be part of the UN and to be part of this family, and have joined. I started out at UNDP, 7.5 years at UNDP, and was brought in to build a particular talent program, which brought in experts from various areas of governance, partnerships, HIV/AIDS, and to have them infuse the culture with their thinking and their innovations, and then to move on, but to leave that background behind. And that was very much bringing in my private sector experience on how I was dealing with, in the HR consulting world, to a multilateral setting. And that was all about bringing talent, developing that talent even further, and then honing that talent for the organization. And that was a very exciting 7 years. Then I moved laterally to UNICEF. And of course, the mandate was most appealing. I've always actually wanted to work for UNICEF, but it wasn't the right time when I wanted to start out at the UN. And finally, when I wasn't looking, the opportunity presented itself and I made a lateral move to UNICEF. I had the pleasure of working with some really exciting people, background, experiences, and in the field who were supporting to deliver results for children. And I was supporting them from an HR perspective and looking at organizational transformation in that context, providing, strengthening leadership capability and strengthening leadership skills for the team that was working on the front lines. And that to me was a very rewarding experience because I could hone in my skill sets even further and add value. And that was a fantastic 8.5 years with UNICEF. Then I wanted to hone my skills within the UN context. I had been in 2 agencies, and they're called agencies, funds, and programs. UNDP and UNICEF are part of the UN family, but they are not in the main UN Secretariat. So in order to sort of expand on that, I moved to the UN Secretariat in 2016. And there, while I was still looking at issues of developing leadership capability, it was more focused on strengthening accountability. And that is one of the hot topics right now with the UN, and certainly working in a different setting and engaging in the context of intergovernmental meetings and intergovernmental fora to make those changes. So it's been an extremely interesting and fascinating 20 years at the UN. What has been the driving force for me has been, apart from the fact that it's always been a very special organization for me. I am from Singapore. I grew up in Singapore and went to school in Singapore, but I did my university education in the UK. I've worked in Africa and then here in the US. The UN is a unique organization with tremendous convening power. Apart from that convening power, it has a very unique makeup. It's a multicultural environment, and that is its uniqueness about it. For me, my journey to the UN was about giving back and contributing to making a difference, but in my own way, because I'm obviously not going to be able to change the world, but in my own way, I'm able to make incremental changes by bringing my skill sets and trying to add value where possible to support those working to make a difference to the world's marginalized communities, women and children, and to impact in my own way indirectly. I'm not at the front lines, as I mentioned earlier, but I'm behind the scenes supporting that front line as they deliver results for beneficiaries in challenging contexts, which is then remarkable, really. The second piece of driver, which was important for me, as I mentioned earlier, was the multicultural environment. It was very important, given that I consider myself a global citizen. The diversity of people, cultures, perspectives, experiences, it's truly unique, truly rewarding, and I've gained so much from that in terms of lessons learned. And I have grown, I continue growing, even till today, and no 2 situations or experiences have been the same, but the reward has been quite tremendous because it's been a tremendous learning opportunity for me and rounding out really my skill sets all the way through from a career from the private sector and into this and multilateral sector. And thirdly, the challenges. That's what keeps me going. It's always known to be a bureaucracy. It is a bureaucracy, but there are challenges in every context, in every environment. The key is to understanding what the context is if you choose to or join this context. And as I mentioned, the cultures in various agencies are different. And in the Secretariat, it is also very different. And so understanding the context is absolutely key. But looking for those opportunities where there are challenges, because with challenges come possibility, and possibilities are, it's for you to decide how you want to hone in those skill sets, what skill sets you can bring to the organization to add value. And for me, it's that challenge that keeps me going, that energizes me, the challenge to transform and shift the culture and try to shift the mindsets. That's very rewarding, even when you manage to shift just a little bit. So just to close, I would say if it's the right environment for you, as I have described it, then this is where you probably will feel excited or have a rewarding experience. But you need to be open-minded, you need to be flexible and adaptable, and be sensitive to what's around you. And maybe I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate your remarks. Suzanne, you came from a different perspective, so I'd love to hear a few comments from you as well.
Sure, thank you very much. It's always hard to follow Aruna. I did come up a slightly different and unexpected path. So good afternoon, and thank you for the honor of speaking to such an impressive and varied group of talented professional women like yourselves. You might be wondering why the tech person is in the room, so I'm gonna make my pitch. I have the pleasure of leading one of the 2 enterprise application centers at the Office of Information and Communications Technology. We're a global team of analysts, engineers, and software developers who build the software that's used by the UN to run its operations and deliver its mandates. And that is quite a daunting task if you consider the scale and scope of our operations. You may not know, but the UN is one of the biggest movers of people, things, and objects following the US military. Our global operations are truly astounding. And we have such a wide variety of mandated areas across the 5 pillars. It's exponentially larger than most nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, or even private companies. So there's plenty to do in tech. I'm also one of the few women in a leadership position in technology at the UN, and I'm working very hard to change that. Ever since I was in high school, I visited the UN on a school trip, and I dreamed of working here. It's actually in my yearbook, most likely to work at the UN. So I felt very committed to the path. But my path was a bit squiggly, as they say. That's a new term, the squiggly path. I studied Russian in college, thinking I would be a diplomat or go into international politics. And then when I graduated, my mother's country, Croatia, then former Yugoslavia, was in the throes of a terrible civil war. And I decided if I was ever going to work for the UN, that's when I was going to do it. So I saved up my money, I nannied, I bought a plane ticket, and I knocked on the door, and I got a job at the UN peacekeeping forces in former Yugoslavia. This was in 1992. As I don't know if there's the lowest rung on the ladder, but this was the lowest rung on the ladder is where I came in, but it was where I wanted to be, and it was a fantastic experience. And after a few years, I joined the headquarters Department of Field Support. I really wanted to stay in peacekeeping. And I started dipping my toes into technology. This was in the early days. I mean, I remember when we got a beeper, and that was exciting. And then we got a cell phone, and then quickly we started seeing things moving into the digital direction. And finally, I got to use my Russian degree, because most of the programmers were Russian at the time. Not so much anymore, but definitely at the time. And I stayed with the UN for a couple of years more, and I decided to leave the UN because I got an incredible opportunity to join a startup organization, nonprofit, that was seeding venture capital in emerging markets. They were developing the idea of entrepreneurship, bringing in venture capital investments in places to accelerate economy and innovation. And that was an incredible experience. I was on the technical strategy side, but it was really the world of entrepreneurship and a large scale, quickly growing nonprofit that I learned from. And I know a lot of you are coming from that nonprofit sector. And from my perspective, it was this external experience of the several years on that team that really enabled me to make my career path at the UN. I also started a computer science master's degree and quickly determined that that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to move into a leadership position, so I shifted gears and I got my master's in public administration. And that really gave me the accounting, the finance, the HR, and the communication skills that I could combine with technology skills to make a difference in the organization. So I returned to the UN, and I've made my way up that ladder to my current position. But I've always stayed grounded in technology. But what I'm finding is that the world of technology and digital transformation is changing. It is not the world of engineers anymore. It is a world that's quickly being driven by all parts of the organization. And it's the partnerships that I have with people on Aruna's team and people in peacekeeping and development that are really helping us change the way we work. And that opens the door to a lot of lateral movement. Some of the best project managers that I work with are not on the technical side. They're on the political science side, or they're on the substantive side, but they know their business. And this is where I also open up often the conversation about diversity and inclusion in technology and engineering. If the engineers decide what problems to solve, it's really important that the engineers are reflecting the makeup of our community, of our organization, of our society. And if they're not being guided in any reasonable way by an intelligent demand, I call it, then we don't have an active partnership. So I know it's not likely that too many of you are going to be applying for the technology jobs, but that skill set, that ability to understand what you need and have a conversation with your technology provider is what I think opens the door for potential and opportunity in the UN, and where I see a lot of women stepping in that kind of, interoperational conversation. So that's just my pitch out there, because I'm looking for all areas to build the technology, forces of the UN. So I guess just in a couple of closing remarks, I worked in the UN, I worked outside the UN, I came back to the UN, I felt like I was coming home, but it's kind of like coming home after you had a real life experience that changed you and changed your perspective. And I think for people that are coming from outside the UN, that's what you bring to the table. We get very caught up in our own language, our own bureaucracy, our own processes, and we need people to come in from the outside and break those habits and those mindsets. And I think that's sort of where that's your superpower, right? I'm coming in with another way to do something, another way to look at this problem, another way to change an attitude or a mindset. And we need that constant flow, because if all we ever do is circulate what's inside, the building, we don't make those fundamental innovative changes. It's what I'm seeing being very active and transformative on the technology side, but also across all areas. So definitely we need you, and we need, constantly need new talent coming in and taking us forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both for those inspiring remarks. I'd now like to invite Joan Ampa from Human Resources to help tell us a little bit more about the recruitment process, and then we'll turn to your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Good afternoon to you. And so being that we're time restricted, we have so much today, I will quickly give you a presentation, be brief on everything, but give you detailed information. So the outline today, a bit about diversity and inclusion, the job networks, types of skills that we look for, the soft skills, and also give you information about our mid-career entry points, some tips about the application process and competency-based interview, and also tell you a bit about benefits and entitlements, some highlights. So to proceed forward, we are from the Secretariat in New York, and the Secretariat, I'm sure you know, it's a global reach. So we always share this map to let you know that depending on where you're interested, where in the world you will be interested in working, there's likely an office somewhere that you can possibly pursue a career. So keep that in mind. So we are a diverse workforce, and this is very important to the United Nations. We have nationals from all the member states, 93. we hope to make sure that there's equal representation, which we are always diligently working on. It's an inclusive environment, inclusive of all gender identity, and we've pushed over the years to achieve gender equality. And so for all job applications, we encourage women especially to apply. This is very important to us. And we're also inclusive of persons with disabilities. And so anybody qualified with any type of disability, we work to provide reasonable accommodations to make sure that they have a comfortable environment and be able to be a productive member of our workforce. We are multilingual. English and French are our working languages. And then, of course, Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, and Russian are the other official languages. So everybody is welcome. It's a welcoming environment, regardless of your race, regardless of religion or socioeconomic background. No worries, the UN is a place for you. So now we'll talk about the job networks. It's very important that you understand the types of job networks that the UN offers. This is specific to the Secretariat. So we offer jobs across 9 job networks and 47 job families. The 9 job networks you see on the slide were created to promote career opportunities for applicants such as yourselves interested in pursuing a career at the UN. And so it enables you to transfer skills within similar jobs in a similar job family. So the main priority of the UN is to recruit a versatile and experienced workforce to meet its evolving organizational needs. So the purpose of these networks, one of them is to pull in, the main purpose actually, is to pull in UN positions that are within a similar or same field. So when you go to search for positions, the job network you browse should reflect your background, education, experience, and career interests. So you see on your screen all these networks. For example, the Development Network, DevNet, it comprises of the Social, Economic, and Development Network, which features positions related to sustainable development, economic affairs, social affairs, and statistics, for example. So anybody with a background in any of these areas can possibly transfer skills, do different jobs in that area. So it gives that flexibility. We also have, for example, the Magnet, Management and Administration Network. This focuses on positions related to administration, finance, audit, human resources, etc., to name a few. So you can see that it gives opportunities for candidates to be able to pursue different avenues within one umbrella of job families. Then, of course, the POLNet, Political, Peace, and Humanitarian Network, which focuses on positions related to human rights, political affairs, and humanitarian affairs. So these are some examples that it gives you a perspective of what we have to offer. So for more information on these job networks, please visit our careers website at careers.un.org. So these are entry points, categories. On the top, it's not really for this specific audience. However, we have it on this slide just to give you a broad picture of what we have available. So we have the Field Service Network and the General Service Network. This is for the entry level, the younger population. The Field Service are internationally recruited and the General Service are locally recruited. So on the bottom is where our focus is on today, the professional and higher categories. So there are 2 kinds, those that are internationally recruited on the left bottom, and on the right are those that are locally recruited. So when we say internationally recruited, these are staff that can work in many different offices, as I mentioned, throughout the world. And so they're expected to be able to be flexible in terms of mobility and to assist the UN in its initiatives globally. And those that are locally recruited, of course, are mainly brought on board to work on specific assignments within the specific duty station. So for these professional level jobs, advanced university degree is required. And if you don't have that and you only have a first level university degree, bachelor's, then you will need, in addition to the minimum required years of experience, you need 2 additional years of qualifying experience. So to go deeper into that for mid-career entry professionals like yourself, the experience requirements I included the P3 level, which is a step above the junior professionals. So that's somewhere up there going towards the mid-career. But for yourself, so you're looking at the P4, which is 7 years of experience will be required if you have a master's degree. And then the P5 senior level, also this is all part of the mid-career, 10 years of experience for the P5. And then we have the director levels, D1, Director 1, and D2. So these are 15 plus years of experience. So again, with all of this, if you only have a bachelor's degree, then the years that you're seeing reflected, you will need 2 years on top of that. So keep that in mind. Then of course, we seek to promote jobs that are in based on the needs of the organization at a certain specific time. So from now, 2021 through 2023, for mid-career professionals with 7+ years experience, based on projected forecasts, you see up here, these fields will be in demand because of upcoming vacancies within the UN Secretariat. So some of these are economic affairs, statistics, social affairs, political affairs, human rights, public information, administration, and information management and technology. And keep in mind that these are not the only vacancies that are available, but these are what we are targeting our outreach because of upcoming vacancies. And so there are other vacancies in all the networks that come up because of different projects, different events that happen that whereby there's the need for experts in these fields, in other fields as well. So keep that in mind. More information on this is available at our careers.un.org again. And also to mention that we are encouraging nationals who are underrepresented because we seek diversity in our workforce to apply for jobs. So the United States is underrepresented. So please be encouraged to apply for these jobs as they become available. So now let's talk a bit about our application process. The UN, we do not specifically take resumes. You have to build your application online, as most of you know. So these are the steps. You visit our careers.un.org website employment platform. You search for relevant vacancies in your field, and then you create your online profile, which is our original resume, as I said. Then you go ahead and submit your application, which goes through an evaluation and assessment. In some of the vacancies, there will be a test in addition to a competency-based interview. All our interviews are competency-based, so keep that in mind. And then after that, for those who meet the requirements, they go through the selection and notification process. Please be reminded that our entire recruitment process does not charge any fees. There are no fees involved. There's been quite a bit over the years, some scams going out by other entities, people that obviously are not seeking your interest at heart, that are going out doing some type of recruitment thing for the UN, claiming to be representing the UN. Please do not fall for that. Our main recruitment does not charge any fees. So keep that in mind and make sure you always applying for jobs at our website, careers.un.org. So some tips on the application process. Make sure you meet the minimum requirements before applying. Please review the job opening very carefully and focus on the main requirements, and also look in your background to see where you fit. This will really make it easier and also very convenient, whereby a lot of the jobs you apply for, you see that you'll be contacted to come in and for further assessment. That's because you match yourself well to the requirements of specific job openings. So keep that in mind. And so be concise and clear and targeted to the job opening requirements, as I mentioned, and make the most of your experience. Highlight all achievements that you have in your background as it relates to the requirement of the job opening. And make it a targeted approach, and always customize your application to fit the job, again, based on your background, your skills, etc. And an important point, especially for external candidates, make sure you review the competencies that are advertised in the job opening. I'll speak more about competencies shortly. So in addition to the substantive experience related to the job requirements, that you'll be highlighting. Make sure that one thing that external candidates become more competitive is if they're able to demonstrate the soft skills that are relevant to the specific job opening. So review the competency sections of each job application and look into your own self and see whether or not you have these elements that will be of value to the UN before you apply, because this will help you achieve your goal. So these are the parts of the personal history profile, which is our version of the resume. So first you have your cover letter. Again, highlight your achievements and also try to present yourself in a way that the hiring manager will see you have the background that they're looking for. And a good way to do that, as I mentioned, is to focus on the requirements of the job opening and have some kind of like a marriage between the two. So we also ask for your personal information, educational background, experience, languages. Each job would have the specific languages that are required, usually English and French, and English and or French. So also references, if any. So to build your application, again, go to careers.un.org. And then to give you additional tips, I know a lot of people would say, okay, we've been applying, but we never hear back from the UN. You have to be careful when you submit your application in the areas of education, experience, and languages, because there's this initial filtering that is done because we get a lot of applications. So in this area, for example, education, if the job opening is saying the minimum required education, it's, let's say, a bachelor's degree, and you have that, you list your institution, there's a checkbox that will ask you, did you obtain your degree? A lot of people will forget to check that. If you miss that part, your application will automatically be filtered out and it will never make it to the hiring manager. So keep that in mind. And then of course, also in the area of experience, whatever the minimum experience requirement is as listed in the job opening, again, reflect that. Make sure you've captured this when you list your experiences. Because if you miss that even by a month, a day, whatever, it will again filter you out. And with language, it's the same. English, if English is saying that's the required fluency in it and you're fluent, we will ask for proficiency in the areas of reading, speaking, writing, and understanding. So in all these areas, if you're fluent, make sure you indicate fluency in all areas. Otherwise, again, you'll be filtered out. And I'll speak a bit more about competencies shortly. There are soft skills that we look for in our candidates. So what are the soft skills that are so important to the UN? So the competencies, as we like to say, these are a combination of skills, attributes, and behaviors, because we believe that past performance is an indicator, very strong indicator of future performance. And so the UN values these qualities, and external candidates become more competitive when they are able to demonstrate these abilities, as I mentioned. So in areas of your personality, your behavior, we look for what motivates you, what knowledge you have, and that will be valuable to the specific job opening. So make sure you have these and you're able to explain it well, especially when you come for the interview. So when you look in the job opening, you will see that the competencies are listed and professionalism is always there, which would be your substantive knowledge of the subject matter, the background experience that we need for that specific job. And also the core competencies, usually you would have 2 more, or if the position is managerial, you would have 2 additional managerial competencies. So some of the popular ones, planning and organizing and the core competencies. Teamwork is another big one, communication, for example, and sometimes even client orientation. So with that listed, you will see certain performance indicators also advertised in the job opening. And so in preparing, make sure that you're putting together examples from your background that show your qualities in these performance indicators as you see in the job opening. So make sure that you've done this. And under managerial competencies, a big one that is very popular is leadership, managing performance, judgment, and decision-making. That also very popular. But it all depends on what is the specific requirement to the hiring manager for that specific job opening. So these are just some tips. For more information, we have this booklet online, the United Nations Competencies for the Future. Make sure you check it out. It has more detailed information of what I'm describing. And now let me give you a few tips about a few information highlights, rather, examples of the benefits and entitlements that UN staff enjoy. The UN is a very family-friendly environment, and so we work to make sure that staff are very comfortable and have that peace of mind to be able to perform and do well to support the work of the UN and also be able to support their families. And so our salaries are competitive, but then at times we don't always compete well with, especially in the private sector when you compare us or some other international organizations. However, if you look at in the areas of benefits, we are highly competitive, and there's so many benefits that we offer that I couldn't possibly share all of it in this short time of a program. So I put some highlights. We have education grants for the children of staff working on the international level, where a portion of the child's education expenses is subsidized by the UN. This is from kindergarten all the way through the first level university degree. We also have the dependent allowance. If you have a spouse that at any time is making less than a certain maximum threshold, the UN gives you an allowance for the spouse, or also an allowances for children 18 years or younger. We also have rental subsidy for those working on international level in those different duty stations. A portion of your reasonable rent is subsidized by the UN on a certain sliding scale, up to a maximum of 7 years until you switch duty stations, and then it resets. Our pension fund is a very good one, a nice cushion that you can contribute in, and then once you retire, enjoy. Our health insurance is very comprehensive. It's international for you and your dependents. And we have 6 weeks annual leave that is fully paid. And also maternity and paternity leave. We're family friendly, as I said. And so for women, you get 4 months maternity leave, and for fathers, 1 month. And as my colleagues have already said, it's working for the UN is very rewarding. You get to be part of a team that works to help make the world a better place in your own small way. So if you're passionate about that, you're very welcome to please join us and become a staff for the United Nations. And a few other information on the training and mentorship programs that the OHRM offers. We have HR learning development programs, so many that evolves and keeps in alignment with the changing times. So it's always changing and developing, helping you develop yourselves. We also have online training courses that are on our website called Inspira, that you get to participate in to improve your professional background. And also on the job professional development, being that you're working with a vast network of highly qualified professionals on an international level, you get to pick up skills, learning from each other. So that's very good also. And then we also at times sponsor external courses, depending on what the needs of your department are. There are also career counseling opportunities that you can take advantage of, and also mentor-mentee programs in the various duty stations. So here are a few highlights that you need to be aware of. So with that, I thank you very much. I hope I was able to give you substantive information to help you in your search for vacancies and jobs opportunities at the United Nations. You can reach us at talentoutreach@un.org with any additional questions, and our website, as I mentioned, careers.un.org. Follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much, and over to you, Kim.
Wonderful, thank you, Joan. And with that, I'd like to invite back all of our speakers, as well as to invite Eva and Selena, Joan's colleagues, to join us to answer some of the many questions that you all have filled in during the Q&A section. I was gonna lead off with a few of my own, but there's so many I don't even have to. So first, we had a couple questions on the application process. So the first one, which fits really well with our topic today, is how does the recruitment process balance from internal hires to external hires? And how can an external candidate be more competitive? I know, Suzanne, you mentioned a few of those in your opening remarks, but I think maybe we can expand on that. And then also, how much does having a network at the UN matter? Is just applying through the system enough? Is it a blind selection process? Is it helpful to build a network internally first when applying for a job? So I'll start with those two.
Ava, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. My network was a little bit low just now, and this is why my video also didn't switch on. Would you be so kind to repeat the first two questions? I just heard those two first.
Certainly. So the two questions are, has the recruitment process balanced from internal hires to external hires? How can the external candidate be more competitive? And how much does having a network inside the UN help? Do you need that, or can you just apply through the portal? Is it a blind selection process, or how does that look like for most positions?
Okay. Thank you. I'll answer the second question first. That's a very easy question. I think it's always good to have a network in terms of information. So when people know about jobs that you have maybe missed out on when you looked for it, or if somebody can tell you more about the work that is being done in that office, that's a nice touch to you being competitive. But in terms of really getting a job, networking is not the way to get in or to get up in the United Nations. It is really an absolutely fair and transparent process where everybody applies online, internals and externals, and they will all be invited to the same assessment, the same type of interview, and compete against each other. And that brings me actually also to question number one. I think a lot of managers these days look for external candidates because they want this fresh breeze, new ideas, as Suzanne mentioned it earlier. We all know each other inside, and we, go through the same training, and we have maybe gotten used to sharing the same ideas. And I think we all agree also with what our Secretary General thinks, that we need to freshen up the organization, bring younger people in, and bring people in who have a different mindset and can bring expertise that we eventually do not have yet in the organization.
Excellent. And a few more on the hiring process. How long is the hiring process typically, from when the application closes to hearing from the first round? What does that look like? Is there a common answer to that, or does it vary a lot? And how do you determine years of relevant experience? A lot of people have bounced around between different fields. So what is considered relevant?
Okay, here the first question is easier to answer. We have some statistics on that, but it really depends on the type of position for which you apply. So if it's a short-term position, the recruitment process will be very quick. Within 2-3 months, you can be on board. While if it's a fixed-term position, that typically takes a little bit longer because more people apply, but also because there are a number of institutionalized steps in the process. So we want to make sure that every candidate is treated in the same way, fair and transparently. So we have sort of commissions that check the process and make sure that everything runs correctly. And the more people apply for a post, the longer that takes. So for a fixed term position, I think once you have applied, typically after the end of the application period, it will take maybe a month until you hear whether you will be invited for an assessment or not. After the assessment, another month until you get an answer about interview or not. And after the interview, maybe another month to see whether one was selected or not. For consultancies, it's typically much quicker. For internships, for sure as well. And then the second question, can you remind me what that was? Sorry.
I think we had years of relevant experience. So what's considered relevant?
That's a really, it's a good question, but difficult to answer so generally. I think in the first place, it will be the manager who knows best what the job entails and whether other jobs would be, or parts of work a person has done would be relevant for this particular position. And it will also be the hiring manager who explains to those supervisory boards that control or that check on the process why the manager would find such experience relevant or not. But for an applicant, I would say this is your own good judgment. You apply for a job because you have a reason for applying. You have read through the job opening. You have an idea of what the job will look like because it describes the duties and responsibilities. So there, I think you yourself can imagine best, really, whether what you have done so far is an experience that is relevant with transferable skills for that particular position.
Thank you. And then we have a lot of questions about being a UN consultant. So is it easier to enter into the UN as a consultant? Is that true for mid-level and senior level as well as junior level? How do you find those positions, and how do you make that transition, either from a consultant to staff or from a mission to headquarters staff?
I think that's a lot of questions in one.
It is.
Okay. First, some general things about consultancies. I think this is one of the areas where the Secretariat is a little bit different from the agencies, funds, and programs, because we look for consultants only for tasks that cannot be done by somebody in-house. So this is typically very specific expertise, which we do not have in-house. While in the agencies, funds, and programs, very, very often, a lot of positions for younger people are published as consultancy positions. So there it's really a part of the bigger teams. You will have a lot of consultants who are typically younger people. And so I think finding those positions depends now really on, do you want just a consultancy as an entry point to the UN system? Then I would look for positions in agencies, funds, and programs, and that means you need to go to their websites. Do you look into consultancy positions because you do not want to be in a fixed agreement and you want to have a more flexible lifestyle? You want to be, you want to decide really on how your life should look like. And let's say you want to work as a consultant for a project for 4 to 6 months and then do something else. Then I think the Secretariat might be rather the organization where you want to look for such type of positions. And how you find them on our website is really like all the other jobs. There is a drop-down menu where you can pick consultancies and then you look for positions that are currently open. Or another possibility would be to subscribe to a consultancy roster. That does not necessarily lead to a specific position, but when hiring managers look for consultants that are on this roster and would fit in a typical role, they would reach out to those individuals and ask them whether they would be interested. And then we spoke about missions. The question was to come from mission to headquarters.
Right. Any key advice on how to do that?
Well, once you work in a mission, typically you are a staff member, and you would just apply. You know, this is what we all do. We apply for the next possible job we're interested in, like any external person. So I work in headquarters at the moment, but if I want to work in a mission, I apply for jobs there. In the same way, somebody in a mission would apply for a job in headquarters, and all that is always on our website.
Excellent, thank you. And Suzanne, you have something to add as well?
Yes, I just wanted to note that on the tech side, as you can imagine, we do hire quite a number of consultants and contractors. Consultants represent a significant portion of our workforce. And I have seen there is movement in and out, but if you go from a consultancy position, you have to go through the same competitive process anybody else would to get a staff position. But you know, sometimes it might be a way to get visibility and exposure and some experience on a very particular type of an engagement, right? But it's definitely a modality that we use, a staffing modality that we use a lot in my area.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Suzanne.
But not the same benefits. Yeah, just want to.
Yeah.
That's why it's a little longer road to get to the staff post.
So I'm going to do our final wrap-up question before we go into the breakout sessions. There are a lot of questions I wasn't able to answer, but especially those that are specific to your own background, path, application questions. Feel free to jump into the appropriate breakout room, and there'll be more space for you to raise your hands and ask your questions on your own. So my final wrap-up question to everyone is parting advice. So any words that you want to share with your future coworkers, 1 minute each. So anything you wish you had known before you started down this path, any one key shining star of advice. Just you can unmute and go ahead.
Aruna, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love to start. I just say, if you're passionate about working with the marginalized people, the marginalized group and communities, and you want to make a difference, I think that you should go for it and take on that challenge. I'm sure you've got skills. You would have thought about what skills and where you want to be within the context, but manage your expectations and keep self-awareness on the top. But be flexible, be adaptable, and I'm sure your experience will be very rewarding. So go for it.
Excellent.
I would say to think a little bit broadly when you're looking for job opportunities. I saw some questions in the Q&A about someone who was in the InfoNet network and wanted to move into another network. I think there's a lot of cross network types of jobs evolving. I know almost every department is looking for people who have background experience in data, for example. I mean, and you can gain that experience in one area outside, but it's transferable to another, so keep a kind of broad view. I think don't be so narrow when you do that search on the careers portal, be a little explorative, see what other kinds of jobs are out there that might excite you or where you have transferable skills, and aim high. I will say that from the data that we've looked at in our selection process analysis, we find that women are sometimes just applying to the jobs where they know they fully meet and they check every single box on that job description. Aim high, let the system tell you or the process tell you that you're not at the level. Don't exclude yourself from any options, because I think that there's sometimes the external experience has a tremendous validity and value inside. So don't limit yourself, take a broad view when looking for opportunities, and it's a bit of a road, but it's worth traveling, because I think that I would never want to work anyplace else in the world. I'm extremely privileged and happy to be at the UN, surrounded by incredibly talented and passionate people. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne. Eva, Joan, Selena, anything you want to add before we close?
No, with pleasure. I think a topic that might have not come up until now is women and families. As you have heard, both Suzanne and Aruna have worked in the private sector. I actually too, before I came to the UN. But what you have not heard is that they both have families and they have children. I too, and my colleagues as well. And while Joan mentioned that the UN is a very family-friendly environment, I just want to point out that you can rise in the ranks, have a career, have a family, have a happy life. That's one thing. The other thing is also that the UN has positions for those people who are more adventurous, who want to go to the field, who want to travel the world. But it has also positions for people who like to stay in one place and who do not want to travel that much, or who do not want to go to a mission. So there are lots of options, and I think what Suzanne just said, just go for it. You need to figure out what you want for yourself, and then pursue that goal. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to add that to be persistent. Don't give up. I know a lot of people would say, I've been applying. You hear this a lot when you go to career fairs. Don't give up, because as much as you're applying and those that you don't make, we also have thousands of applications that become available throughout the year. And also broaden your search. It's one United Nations, so it's not just the Secretariat. This is a shorter presentation. I normally talk about the different agencies, the funds and programs. As my colleague Aruna spoke about, you have a chance to pursue very enriching careers in all these different entities. So broaden your search in that area, especially if you have different backgrounds, especially with the job networks that I spoke about. They all recruit on many levels. So keep that in mind, even consultancies also. So definitely do not give up and be persistent. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best of luck.
And good afternoon, everyone. I will just echo what everyone actually said, since I'm the last speaker, but I'm so much in agreement with what was shared. I think one of the key things for me and what I'll encourage you to do is really get to know yourself. Take some time to get to know yourself. What are your skills? What are your experiences? But also, what is your passion? I think Aruna mentioned it a lot, and that's the key area. What is your passion and how that connect to whatever area that you want to focus on? But of course, expand your horizon. I actually even worked at the UN Secretariat as a staff member, but had the opportunity to go as a UN volunteer because it was an area in which that I wanted to focus on, and I was able to work in the field. So I definitely encourage you, be persistent, don't give up. For many people, I've seen in the chat where people said they have applied several times and have not heard anything, but I'll just say, be persistent, get the information that you need in terms of how to apply and continue to apply. The door will open at some point for you. So I wish you much success in your process. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you to all of our attendees who joined us today and to all of our speakers for fitting a lot of information to a very short amount of time. We now have our breakout sessions, so the links just dropped in the chat. So I'll invite you to join those to speak with some of our speakers a little bit more. And we can delve into some of the concepts like field versus headquarters, assessments, all of those. And for all of you speakers and attendees, I hope you'll all stay connected and we'll be able to welcome you back again soon. Do consider joining us as a member if you aren't already, and that you'll join us as a mentor either this summer at one of our virtual programs or one of our other programs in the future to help us lift up and prepare the next generation of women for leadership, both in careers at the UN and across the field. So again, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing most of you in our breakout sessions.